Let's talk about the 1 to 10 scale of attractiveness. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick, and that's a bookcase I built last night. I can't say I built it. It's Amazon construction, so I kind of just zip it together. So really the Chinese built it, and then I assembled it. So there we are. Anyways, Nick, 10 Minutes with Nick. Let's go ahead and just talk about the 1 to 10 attractiveness scale. And the reason I bring it up is because, again, in my quest to provide nuance to the red pill side of the internet, I constantly come across these types of videos where the 1 to 10 scale is utilized. What is the 1 to 10 scale of attractiveness? It's the basic 1, you ugly as a dog. 10, you pretty little thing. I don't know why the phrase is ugly as a dog. Like, most dogs I see are like really, really cute. Like little fluffy things. And, they're just cute. You want to scratch them behind their ears. Though I suppose if you applied that standard to a human being, you perhaps shouldn't want to scratch a human being behind the ears. Don't make a habit of doing that. You don't know what's back there. This comes up in a lot of these kind of videos, especially on the Whatever podcast. Now, granted, this comes up a lot more in clips of the Whatever podcast than the podcast itself. I've actually watched a couple episodes of the full podcast. There are some things that are clipped out for kind of like, the eye-grabbing content. The podcast itself actually does a decent job of being pretty nuanced conversation between people who think on different sides of modern dating. So, credit to Whatever. They do a nice job on the full-length podcast. On the clips, okay. The issue that comes up a lot, and that all the men in the comments of the Whatever podcast, and you can pay to essentially make a comment come to the top and have it be read. And I think that's mostly how Whatever makes their money. But women have a tendency to rate themselves a 10 no matter what. And men tend to rate themselves not a 10. Now, why is this sort of hyped up on the red pill side of Twitter? Look at these delusional women who all think they're... Okay, first of all, the word delusional is thrown around quite a bit. Let's look up the dictionary definition of delusional, just briefly, because I know it sort of as a thing. Okay, so delusional is an adjective, and it's characterized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. A delusion is typically a symptom of a mental condition. That is sort of like the dictionary definition of delusional. It's about a belief that's held despite incontrovertible. That's the word that's part of that definition. Incontrovertible evidence to the contrary. Now, for the men of Red Pill Twitter, you must know and must be able to define incontrovertible. Red Pill Twitter has this bad habit of mixing anecdotal evidence with scientific evidence. Scientific evidence is based on experimental repeatability, data, things that are collected over time and are rigorously tested against the null case. What do I mean by when I say the null case? I simply mean that when you test a theory in the scientific method, you're not just testing that theory. You're testing the accuracy of that theory. To prevent something from happening where you test the theory once and it happens to just show up. Oh, okay, cool. No, there's repeatability in the scientific method that's sort of built in. In school, they don't necessarily go through those steps and teach you that that's part of it, but it's a key part of it is the ability to repeat and get a similar result. Anecdotal evidence is just based on what happened to you yesterday and how you specifically remember it. That's the key. Memory can be faulty. Data is not, because data doesn't change day to day. So when we're talking about incontrovertible evidence, we're talking about hard data that we can point to. Now, statistics do provide some hard data. But again, statistics, they need to be tested repeatedly and under new conditions and under new parameters. Data is just what feeds an experiment. Data is not an experiment itself. And men on the red pill side of Twitter, we tend to conflate those things. And it all turns into this mess of just like, oh, this is evidence. Look at these delusional women. No. Frankly, the attractiveness scale, as you can kind of see by the ramble that has led us to this point, the attractiveness scale is just pure nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. It's just a nonsense. Attractiveness is completely relative. You know, I make the joke on this podcast all the time. I'm a solid Buffalo 8, but translate that to Los Angeles, and I'm like, probably a 6. Your boy is just making up numbers. There's at least, I don't say somebody, there's many people in Buffalo who look at me and go like, oh my God, that's like a 2 coming down the street. And there's a few people, at least in LA, who walk down the street and go like, damn, look at that slice of cake. I don't know why I said that. I've had a lot of coffee this morning. But either way, the attractiveness scale is a nonsense number. But in the red pill side of Twitter, it's used as like, this is a hard standard that we can apply. And if you don't agree with this standard and the way I interpret this standard, you're delusional. Anecdotal is being conflated with incontrovertible. Incontrovertible meaning something that gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. Technically it's 9.81, but you get the point. That's an incontrovertible fact about the universe. And if you don't agree that on Earth, gravity is 9.81 meters per second squared, that is delusional. You do not, that's incontrovertible. Thinking you're a 10 when somebody thinks you're a 4, that's not evidence of that's not evidence of an incontrovertible nature. That's a difference of opinion. That's where red pill Twitter kind of drives you nuts. And I'm going to say this, but I'm going to be screaming into a void and no one's going to listen to me. Ditch the attractiveness scale. Ditch the 1 to 10. It means nothing. It means nothing. It is meaningless. You want to call yourself a 10? Go for it. I may not agree with you. You may not agree with me. And that's okay. It's a difference of opinion. God, I could do so many things. I could do constant podcasts on, I could do a podcast on podcasts about everything that just spews out of the mouth of these red pill Twitter guys. And it makes me so mad because they get so close to having good points. They get so close. They're right there. And then they just they get crazy. And then they get crazy with it. They almost get close to like quoting scripture, and you're like, oh, well, let's see where they go with this. And then they go way into left field with it. The man should be the head of the household. Where are you going with this? So women have no value. Mostly men die in war. Well, mostly civilians die in war. Okay, but that could be an interesting point. Let's talk about this. So women shouldn't have the right to vote. Red pill Twitter. You are my nemesis. I will eventually be part of a larger group of people who break you. And I will break you, and I will give you nuance. I will rebuild you. And I will rebuild you into something better. And I will teach men to be better. Maybe. Or maybe I'll teach men to be like me, and that'll be weird for all of us. But you know what? Weird is probably better than the men you're turning out. Anyways, Brian and the Whatever podcast, if you happen to hear this podcast, look, your full-length podcast, great. Just do some work on your clips, because your clips make it sound like you are crazy persons and you are the delusional persons. Again, this comes back to the gotcha piece too, right? Like you set up these young women for gotcha moments, and then you clip out the gotcha moments, or someone clips out the gotcha moments and puts them on the internet and makes them look insane and ridiculous. Most of these young women even even the OnlyFans girls who you have such a problem with, they seem fine and intelligent when you listen to the full-length version. It's just in these clips, they seem like absolutely angry, delusional people. Just do better. Just do better in general. As Joey Swole says, you need to do better. Anyways, I'm out of time. I'm almost at 11 minutes. So hopefully with the silences cut out, we'll get down to the actual 10-minute mark. And if we don't, you know what? It's my podcast. So what? I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.